You were made to lead for such a time as this. But leadership can also make you feel stressed and overwhelmed. I get it. But leadership doesn't have to overwhelm you. You just need a guide to help you be proactive. That's why I created my free leadership challenge checklist just for you. Not only will this checklist help you alleviate some of the biggest stressors right now by learning to lead in the mission critical areas of leadership, but it's also going to help you prevent the daily fires you are always fighting and overcome that overwhelm that you feel from all the problems, conflicts, and constraints that you face. Yes, leadership can be hard, but you don't have to just survive anymore. Download my free leadership challenge checklist today, and you'll transform into the leader everyone wants to work with and for. To get this freebie I made for you, just go to leadershipontherocks.com/checklist. Again, that's leadershipontherocks.com/checklist.
One of the biggest things that women have or have a challenge with is confidence, courage, and something called imposter syndrome.
Amen.
And they're all related. So you really don't have one without the other, but I'm going to start with the confidence piece. We're always thinking and running through these stories in our head about what everybody else is thinking about us. And the reality is they're not.
That's so true. This is the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, where we equip and empower leaders like you to thrive in and create harmony between your professional and personal lives. I'm your host, Bethany Reese, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking with Dr. Stephanie Duguid about empowerment of women in leadership. We're looking at all those opportunities and positions out there, women, so this episode is for you. Dr. Stephanie Duguid is a renowned expert in educational leadership and an international best-selling author. She's the founder of Duguid Leadership, a recognized leader among professional women. With over 100 conference invitations and numerous appearances at colleges and universities nationwide, Dr. Stephanie is a sought-after speaker known for her expertise in positive educational leadership and effective communication. Drawing from decades of experience in K-12 and higher education, she is a strategist and connector, empowering clients to achieve exceptional outcomes. Dr. Stephanie's insights have been featured in notable outlets, and she's also the creator and host of the Empowering Women in Educational Leadership radio show, podcast, and blog. In her highly acclaimed keynote, Exponentially Elevate Your Impact as an Educational Leader, she inspires audiences to define their purpose and vision in educational leadership, addressing topics like positive leadership, mindset, optimism, and conflict management with grace. Beyond her professional achievements, Dr. Stephanie is actively involved in leadership roles within educational organizations and is dedicated to supporting students through community college scholarships in memory of her mother. Welcome to the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, Dr. Stephanie. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you so much, Bethany. It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Man, you and I have similar backgrounds in that we both come from the education world, and we're also very passionate about empowering people in leadership. Plus, you and I both love John Gordon. Now,
Yes.
For everybody listening, let me just remind them, John Gordon wrote The Energy Bus, right? The big yellow one that we all love. He also wrote The Power of Positive Leadership, The Power of Positive Teams, and so many other great books. But looking at your work specifically, I love the work that you're doing and helping empower women in leadership. Now, I got to have a disclaimer here. Guys, my guy listeners all around the world, you don't get to sit this episode out because guess what? You are working with us women, okay? So you need to listen up and you are going to get a little secret view into the world of what it's like being a woman in leadership.
Yes,
So I want you to stay
absolutely.
engaged. So I'm so excited that you're coming on, Dr. Stephanie, because we got to talk about women in leadership. This is kind of a relatively new thing because of, let's just say, most of history, ancient history and even modern history, women had to take a back seat. They had to stay at home with the babies. So
That's right. That's exactly right. And it's no longer that way.
Amen to that. So will you just kind of introduce this whole topic to us? Like, what's your journey? What led you to focus specifically on women in leadership?
Well, my journey started years ago. I had a mom who was an amazing teacher in a Texas high school for about 40 years. And she was one of those that just connected with everybody. And if you can imagine a typical Texas woman, big hair, lots of makeup, high heels, just this smile and this presence whenever she came into a room. Well, she always had students that just really resonated towards her. And if they had a challenging home life, she was their go-to person and almost their stand-in parent. We had some students live with us.
Mm.
Well, mom was also what's called the welcome wagon lady. And I don't know if you've ever heard about that, but in the 70s, it was the person in the community that would welcome new members to the community and sit down in their living room and have conversations. So
Yes.
my mom was that person. She actually went to welcome wagon school. Well, fast
That's a
forward,
thing. That's
it
amazing.
it is a thing. Fast forward to August of 2001, and unfortunately, my mom was in a
Mm.
tragic car accident and passed away.
Oh,
And
I'm
so
sorry.
mom was my mentor. I mean, she was everything to me, and she was just so graceful in everything that she did, and it was so natural to her.
Mm.
And I realized that that wasn't the norm. When she passed away, that wasn't the norm. And so I was almost struggling on my journey because she was my mentor into education on what I should do. And that's when I really took it upon myself to go, okay, well, what would mom do? And how would mom
Mm.
handle this? And I realized that a lot of women in education don't have that person that they can look to. They don't have that mentor and they don't have that idol, if you will, to go, oh, well, there's somebody else that has already been there before me. Let me see how I can create my own journey with my own shoes and take my own path to get there as well. So that's really how it started, was
Wow.
because of my mom that I had growing up.
And what a beautiful legacy that you are carrying that honors her. And I love it. I love what you're doing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And thinking about women and this is just even bigger than education because
Right.
women in all kinds of jobs, all kinds of industries, it doesn't matter what industry you're in, it is a struggle to want to or to have the avenue to be able to step into leadership. One, there's not a lot of women there to look to as mentors on how to get there,
Mhm.
how to get there. What's the path that we go? But number two, some of the women that have taken those roles, let's just say, let's talk about this big storyline that you have to be the A type personality with, and I'm not going to say the B word, but that's probably what a lot of people are thinking, that you got to kind of have that personality to step into leadership as a woman. I want to debunk that myth with you.
Yes, yes, exactly. Because, well, we talk about the feminine and the masculine side. And so a lot of women feel that you have to be more masculine and treat a position like you would if you were a man in that position, which there's nothing wrong with men in leadership at all. Some are amazing, just as there are women. There are amazing leaders and there are terrible leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And, my goal and my focus is to be a positive, empowering, supportive, relationship building leader in any position. And you can be this incredible leader without being so aggressive.
Yes.
Now, whenever we talk about women in leadership, you're right. So a lot of times they follow the path of what has been there before. And
Mm-hmm.
although that is what they have seen and they feel they have to do that, leadership is so much more because you don't have to have a title to be a leader. John Maxwell
Amen.
said it best is that leadership is influence, nothing more,
Mm-hmm.
nothing less. And so the way that you treat people matters. The
Yes.
relationships you build matter. And so
And
as you're building those relationships, there are so many decisions you can make that will guide where you go.
absolutely. And everything you're saying has nothing to do with your gender. It has
No,
nothing to do with whether you're a man or a woman. That is good leadership. And we've got to remove all of these labels that we put on that, well, if you're a leader and a woman, you're more like this. If you're a leader and a man, or if you're a leader and a young millennial, let's go, those
right.
generational labels. Or if you're a leader and a boomer, you're automatically this way. And let's
Right.
strip all of that and just say, this is what good leadership looks like. Because leadership, I love John Maxwell for that too. It's influence, it's people. You're in the people business, it's knowing
That's
how
right.
to work with people. So, step into talk to us. How do we as women, number one, stop disqualifying ourselves, saying,
Mhm.
I can't be a leader, or looking at all my responsibilities, or, whatever it is. There's so many excuses that we give ourselves to disqualify ourselves from leadership. So help us women who I'm just show up to my job. I do a good job. I take care of my family. I'm
Mhm.
a good friend. Help me to open my eyes to leadership. What's out there? What can I do?
Well, first of all, in your position where you are, again, it's not about a title. So if you are doing all of those things, if you care about your family, if you care about your friends, if you're doing all the things, you're already a leader and people are looking to you. So we need to demystify the fact that women don't feel that they can go to that next level and have a title of a leader because they can't let go of all these other things that they're responsible for. That's what we need to push away
Mhm.
because it's the way that you hold yourself, it's the way that you interact with folks. And so, one of the biggest things that women have or have a challenge with is confidence, courage, and something called imposter syndrome.
Ooh.
And
Can
so,
you say those
whenever
again? Let me
I
let me
sure
take those in
can,
again.
confidence, courage,
Hmm.
imposter syndrome.
Amen.
And they're all related. So, you
Hmm.
really don't have one without the other. But
Yeah.
I'm going to start with the confidence piece. So a lot of times we have this voice in our head, and you probably have it as well. I know that I've had it that, well, I'm not sure if I can do that, or I wonder what somebody is thinking when I make that decision, or I wonder what my coworker thought whenever I made that comment. We're always thinking and running through these stories in our head about what everybody else is thinking about us.
Hmm.
And the reality is they're not.
That's so
So
true.
and that's the hardest thing to do. You put something on social media and you're worried about, oh my gosh, I wonder what people are going to think. Am I going to get some likes? What kind of
Hmm.
comments are they going to have? Just you have to stop. And
Yeah.
it's hard to do that. You always wonder. But if you can say, I'm not going to think about that right now, let me just focus on what my purpose and my passion is, and I'm going to move forward on my journey.
Hmm.
So, one is to get that out of your mind. The second one is the courage. A lot of times we think about doing things. We're like, well, I really should, but we never do.
Yeah.
And so having that courage, and courage also aligns with our comfort zone. And a lot of people have heard that term comfort zone. And your comfort zone is where everything is safe and secure and you can predict what's going to happen. Most people drive to work on the same route. They pick up their coffee at the same place. They have lunch at probably one of three or four places. Your schedule is the same. And if you're expecting something to change, then your comfort zone has to change because on the edge of that comfort zone, that's where you have, the questions, the decision making, the fear, all of these things, the uncertainty. But once you step outside of that comfort zone and take that first
Hmm.
step towards your goals, you're going to start building that courage. That is the courage to step out.
Wow.
And then we talk about imposter syndrome. And this one we see so much is that, women are amazing because they multitask, they
Hmm.
have empathy, they care for others, they automatically have all the characteristics of a leader, but they don't see themselves in that position. They feel like they're an imposter if they step into some sort of leadership position. Like, who am I to have that? I'm just a mom. And I hate it when people say, and I
Oh,
hate this really strong word, that I'm just this.
yeah.
Moms are incredible. You created a human. And
Yes.
if you didn't have one yourself and you're caring for others, you're a caretaker.
Yeah.
That takes a lot. And so the imposter syndrome is a little bit more challenging to overcome, but there's several things you can do. One is that positive self-talk. It's shifting your mindset. So believing I can do this. And even if you have an affirmation you say every morning, I am a powerful, successful woman.
Hmm.
I am a great friend and an empathetic caretaker. And whatever your affirmation is, say that daily and you'll see your mind start to
Yeah.
change. And then if you have somebody that you can talk to, whether it's a mentor or a friend, and just talk through some things. These are my goals, these are my aspirations, and not somebody that's going to give you the answers or the
Hmm.
solutions, but somebody that's going to pull more questions out and say, well, why do you think that? Or what do
Yeah.
you feel your next step should be? And it's just a guide.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
such a great path to self-discovery, right?
Yes.
So often we are told by society or social media or whatever
Hmm.
is going into our brains, what we
Hmm.
are and how we should be versus self-discovery of who did God create us to be.
That's
And
right.
and I love everything you said. I almost want to say, whoa, you're in my head, because we do struggle with imposter syndrome. And think about it, women, for the most part, are managing their households.
Mhm.
Wow, talking about organizing some chaos. That is amazing leadership that we
Mhm.
provide in the home. And you are so spot on with women naturally have these gifts and these abilities and these talents because of our heart and our empathy and our caretaking. And that is
Right.
a huge thing in leadership. But a lot of times, whenever we look at who's in leadership, it is more authoritarian. This is kind of old school. And I do see a shift in leadership, but that
Yes.
authoritarian, do as I say, not as I do, power, title, those things. And then the women who have stepped into those roles probably had to fight tooth and nail to get there in the first place. I get that.
Mhm.
But then now they're setting that model of that's the way that I have to act. And it almost is creating competition between women of, okay, there's not a lot of spots out there for us. So we have to go at each other to be the
Mhm.
one to get the spot instead of supporting each other and cheering each other on. And I don't even remember what awards show. I'm not into pop culture, but Jamie Lee Curtis was in a movie and she was supporting her friend that won this award for the movie. I think the movie's called Everything Everywhere All at Once. And she is just like, yeah, go girl, like really cheering her on. And it started this whole movement of, hey, women need to stop being so competitive with each other and start cheering each other on.
Yes.
So can you
Yes.
step into that world for us of number one, we've got to have the courage, like you were saying, we got to have the confidence, we got to have, we got to get rid of that self or imposter syndrome. But
Mhm.
now as we start to look, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start looking to the left and looking to the right at other women. So how do we step into that dynamic of working with other women and seeing the potential out there or opportunities out there for women? How do we work with other women?
Yeah, so that is a big challenge. And one of the things that I always say is empowered women empower women.
Oh,
So
that's
if
good.
you are working with somebody and there is tension, it's usually because there's some sort of jealousy.
Mm,
And it might not be on your part, it might be on somebody else's part, but it's very difficult to sometimes overcome that. Because as you mentioned, women are starting to compete. And we all know that the best thing that you can do is to build a team around you of individuals who have amazing strengths, different strengths. And so realizing that we're not all the same, we all bring
mhm.
something different to the table. Just because we're a female doesn't mean we're in competition.
Yeah.
I might have that strategic aspect. Somebody else might have, a curriculum aspect or whatever it might be in your area. So I think it's really just sitting down and having a conversation. And that's the part that we miss so much these days, especially with technology.
Yeah.
We're focusing on emails and text messages and hearsay, and we see each other at meetings when you have to be on all the time,
Mm,
and you don't really get to know the person.
yeah.
So I encourage anybody out there, if your impression of somebody that you're working with or that you're speaking with is only in a business formal setting, take a walk, have a lunch, get outside of those four walls and have a conversation and get to know the person.
Mm,
Because when you do that, then you can really understand what are the goals that each of you have. It may be the same or it may be different, but how can you support one another? It's not
absolutely.
about winning. It's about how can we best serve those that are around us.
I love that so much. And you are so spot on with the fact that we have lost the connection, the human connection of things
Mhm.
because of text and email and, all these meetings on Zoom or, wherever. And we've got to get to know the person. That whenever
Mhm.
it's hard to hate, it's easy to hate somebody from afar. It's hard to hate them up close, right?
Right.
You've got
Right.
to get to know these people. I love that advice. It's so good. And this is also, I told you, men, stay engaged because this is for you too.
Right.
It,
That's right.
so often you can run into conflict with people at work, but if you get to know them personally, it's going to help, kind of deflate that. Um, and looking at all of the competition between women, and I want to really dive into this just a hair bit more is because, and I've noticed this with my children, one-upping each other, right?
Mhm.
We feel like I've noticed with my kids, and we've really tried to nip this in the bud, especially when they're young. If one has something good to say, the other one wants to say something even better. They're always
Mhm.
trying to one up each other. And I can see that in the workplace of I want to shine more than the other person. And so now that we know, hey, get to know the person and that jealousy will kind of die down, how do we stop the one upping desire of, oh man, she looks good, I need to look good too. And so I want to try to one up her. How do we deflate that in our workplace?
Well, and I think some of that has come from the instant gratification need that everybody has right now, especially with social media. I mean, think
Mm.
about it. If you put a post out there, you want to see how many people like it or how many people comment on it right away. And you're looking at other people's posts to see the same thing. Well, why did their post get more than my post did? And so that's part of this generation, again, with the tech savvy, where you get data points fed back at you all the time, is that you're always wanting to do better than the person next to you. And so one thing that I might say, and this is actually a John Gordon thing that they said in one of their days of development, is that whenever you have a meeting, is a rule of thumb is they never have meetings after a meeting. And so you
Mm.
know how you have meetings and you say what you want to say, and then somebody's like, well, let's talk after about that, or let's talk after about that. We're not going to have those anymore. We're going to say everything that we need to say here in this space. And if it's a meeting of multiple individuals, I understand that sometimes you have to have a one-on-one with whomever it is, but quit trying to strategize your next move to be better than somebody else. That is the me over the we.
Oh, so good. Yes.
And so when you are really there for the betterment of the institution or the organization, and your whole focus is that you're looking at that shared vision of where can we take our team so that we support our client or our student, then everything you do is for that purpose, for the we
Mhm.
purpose, not for the me purpose. And so
Yeah.
that's when you have to think, why am I here? Is it so that I look good, or is it so that I support our vision? And I've even had conversations when I was an administrator at college. I said, now, who can tell me the vision of our institution right now? And I had seasoned people that had been there 30, 40 years. Not a single person could tell me the vision of the college.
Hmm.
And then I said, during this time, I feel that we've lost our why and we've lost the reason that we're here. So if you are looking at this vision and it does not resonate with where you are and what you want to support, then you might need to rethink where you are today. And so that was a huge piece that people go, oh my gosh, she's calling me out. I'm
Hmm.
so focused on what I want for myself that I forgot why I was here. And I think that that's one of the biggest things is know your why. Are you in line with the vision of the institution or
Hmm.
organization? And then are your actions there to support the team, the we, or are you
Yes.
there to support and self-serve yourself?
Oh, you are really putting out there the number one thing in leadership. You have to decenter yourself. It is
Mm-hmm.
not about you. And I really think that has to happen daily because
Right.
our norm, our go-to, our behavior, our habits is all about ourselves.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
daily, you have to die to self and say, it's not about me. This
Mm-hmm.
is not about how I come across or how I look or serving my wants, my needs, my next move. And
Right.
gosh, you really, I mean, your experience and wisdom is really coming out because you're exactly right. That's what happens. There's typically a meeting after a meeting or a phone call after a meeting. Everybody's jockeying for position to get their next foot out there of, hey, no, I want the conversation to go this way or I want the project to go that way. So let me,
That's right.
behind the scenes do all of this jockeying for position.
That's
And
right.
we've got to stop that. We got to kill that in the workplace.
Well, and there's so many things that I have seen personally in leadership. There's so many people that once they have the title, they lead by
Hmm.
power. They have the title, so now they feel
Oh
that they
yeah.
can do anything that they want. But what I find is that a lot of the questions that happen in leadership, people are afraid to ask. So, what
Mhm.
we just talked about is not having that conversation after the conversation is
Yeah.
who's going to stop that if that happens? You have to
Yes.
have somebody that's strong enough to stop it. Or if somebody's having conversations with other people behind the back, you have to have somebody that's strong enough to stop that or that has the
Hmm.
courage to step out and do that.
Hmm.
We talk about John Gordon is one of the best ones that says this as well, is those energy vampires.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You have people at work that they just suck the life out of you, whether it is their attitude, whether it's their comments, whatever it is. And rather than ignoring it, hoping that it goes away, you have got to address it. Because by ignoring it, everybody else around you thinks that you're going to just sit back and take whatever it is, and it changes the entire culture.
Hmm.
And so being that leader, as you mentioned a minute ago, it's not about putting yourself forward. Yes, you're probably the face of the institution or the organization if you're in that leadership position. But as a leader, your job is to support and elevate others. It's being that person that's supporting them up their stairs so
Mhm.
that they can be successful in that journey. And there was an educator, a chancellor of an Arkansas school,
Oh, yay.
Dr. Deborah West. So she is Arkansas State University Mid-South. Her best advice, she was on my radio show last year, was to wear your own shoes.
Mm.
We try to step into the shoes of a previous leader and be like somebody that we admired or that we had before us. But the key is that we all wear different shoes. We have
Yeah.
different sizes, we have different styles. And so wear your own shoes.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good way to summarize it all up.
Yes,
Women, stop comparing, stop looking at all the things that you think you should be and just wear your own shoes.
that's right.
That's amazing.
Exactly right.
Oh, all right, so looking at women in leadership, one, we disqualify ourselves. So we got to get we have to find our courage, and we've got to, get over that imposter syndrome. We've got to stop with the competition. Right now we're looking left, looking right, and comparing ourselves. So once we do the internal work and then we stop looking left and looking right with all of the competition, like what's our next step of how do we recognize the opportunity to, hey, I can lead. I can actually lead well, and then go for it, to step out
Mhm.
there and say, hey, how can we empower women to take that risk and take that next step to say, you know what, I'm going to throw my name in the hat and try to lead.
Well, and part of that is stepping out of that comfort zone.
Hmm.
And so you have to have that desire, if you will, to step into that next level. There have been so many leaders that I've worked with that were the potential was seen in them. And so they were dropped into a new position, but it was so different from where they came from. They're like, oh my gosh, throwing their hands up. I don't know if I can do this
Hmm.
because there's no training.
Yeah.
There's no rule book. There's nothing. And so one of the things that I try to do is encourage women to have a mentor,
Oh, yes.
whether it's with me, whether it's somebody within the organization, whether it's a friend who's been there before, is to have that mentor. Because sometimes you need somebody that is out of your circle of influence to be a different voice that you
Hmm.
hear. And so I had somebody on one of my shows, her name is Nicole, and she was working for a tech company, and she was one of the remote employees. Everybody was remote at that time,
Yeah.
and I think they still are. But she always talked about having a fictitious board of directors. And so that is having key people that you can call on in different areas of your life that are your mentors in those areas, just so that
Mhm.
you can get a different perspective. You don't want the yes person that's always going to tell you everything's great and wonderful. You don't want the person that is always going to be against you, holding you down. You need somebody that's going to be honest, that if you ask a question, that they're going to give you the feedback or the guidance to take those next steps. So I think that would be the next stage for somebody wanting to go into those positions, is if you have somebody that is that mentor, or you're, looking into some programs that are there to support you and have a
Mhm.
community of learners. There's a lot of places where you can find a support network. Again, that's not within your organization. You need to step away from that a little bit and have different voices,
Yes.
but a place where there is support. And that's the whole purpose, is to support one another, to look at your struggles, to maybe hear what others have done in those situations so that you can think about what your opportunities might be and put your own flair on it. And so that would be the next step in my eyes,
I
is
love it.
to get that support network.
You know, the fictitious board of
Board of
directors. I'm
directors.
going to remember that, and I'm going to start dubbing the people in my life. Hey,
Yes,
you're on my board of directors. I love it.
that's
Okay,
right.
so mentorship and then just organizational support. I want to separate those and dive into each one separately.
Yes.
And so you're with your work, and we know that you speak from the stage, you write, you have a radio show, you have all these things, but you are a mentor to a lot of women.
Mhm.
So if I am a new leader coming to you saying, "Hey, help me. I don't even know where to begin." What
Right.
advice, what do you do in your mentorship program that really helps support women feel comfortable, but also become successful in their leadership role?
So the mentorship program I have is really a lot of self-reflection. It's not all about the organization itself. It's about you. Because sometimes you step into a position because somebody else wanted you to do it, or because you felt that that's where your parents wanted you to go. If you're a young individual, that they want you to be in this position. Or, some other person said, oh, well, you'd be good for that, but you were kind of questioning it and, oh my gosh, you got the position. So now what?
Mm.
So the first things that we always do is we talk about, what is your vision? What is your personal vision? Where do you want to be and where do you want to go? And then we break that down strategically to smaller goals and processes and habits. And then whenever you talk about your vision, then we also talk about what is your path and how are you going to get there? We look at your goals and objectives. We look at the way you communicate with folks. Because when you are a peer working with individuals and you have now turned into a leader, sometimes your communication has got to change.
Mhm.
And now you're not just thinking about your own space, you're having to think about a larger space full of individuals. And so we've got to look at communication and positive communication, effective communication.
Amen.
And with effective communication also comes conflict resolution with grace,
Mhm.
because there's going to be conflict.
Yes.
And the way that you respond versus react to somebody is going to make a difference. You can react where it's a nuclear explosion and, you're going to have to pick up all the pieces, or are you going to respond like an emergency responder that helps care for the situation
Mhm.
and heal it back to the way it should be?
And I love that you say
So,
with grace. That is such a beautiful, like, yes.
well, and it's funny because there are different ways to handle that.
Mm.
I've had people in my office where honestly, I have non-renewed them and they walk
Mhm.
out with a smile and give me a hug.
Yeah.
It's the way that you approach it, and it's making them feel like they're heard, but also sharing what is exactly going on at the same
Yes.
time. And so it's a relationship. But we go through all those things, and then we talk about positive leadership, because leadership, some people do it in a negative way. So we talk about positive leadership, and then we talk about putting all of that into action. So how do you take all those steps that you've just learned about yourself and then apply
Mhm.
it to where you are? And so
Mhm.
then we can talk about, in our mentorship sessions that we have thereafter, we look at where you are, what your task is, and then how that relates to your new way of going through that process.
Man.
And it's just amazing to see the growth of some of the women that I've worked with.
And I love it. And this could just be me. Maybe I'm the only woman out there or the only person. This may not even be a woman issue. To stop and take time to focus on self, right? As
Mhm,
a working mom, wife, daughter, you know, my
mhm.
focus is so much on getting everybody else what they need.
Right.
It's like the burnt toast syndrome of moms. You feed everybody and you get the burnt toast that's left, which is not a bad thing. That's why women make such great leaders.
Mhm,
But to take the moment, I love what you said, being intentional and saying, hey, I don't want to just be so busy working that I don't stop and say, hey, where am I headed? Who
mhm.
am I? What do I have to offer? What are my skills and strengths? And where do I actually want to go and take it and create an intentional path to get there? And
Right.
I don't think a lot of women, and this could be men too. I'm not a man, but I feel like me and my girlfriends feel this way.
Mhm,
We don't take time for ourselves to think about that. And I think the number one thing that's going to help us is that we have a mentor. We have someone like you in our lives that says, pause, time out. You've scheduled this time with me. We're going to stop and talk just about you. And
mhm.
because otherwise we won't do it. I got to go
That's
do
right.
some laundry. I got to do some dishes. I got to cook dinner. I got to work on that project, that thing that's due tomorrow. And so I think that's really important. So I love everything that you said, but women out there, I want to encourage you. I know you because I am you. You are a
Mhm,
go-getter. You
mhm.
can get some stuff done, but you also need support.
That's right.
So find a mentor that's going to help you stop and just take a breath and reflect on yourself and your leadership and where you're headed. So thank you for that. So now
You're
let's
welcome.
transition and switch to the organizational piece because, oh
Mhm.
man, you said something and I almost wanted to jump out of my chair saying, yes, you are right. Organizations and the support of new leaders. It's almost non-existent. And
Right.
I say almost because they do probably give you a handbook. They do probably give you a one-day training, like maybe some
Mhm,
videos to watch,
mhm.
but it's not ongoing. What can organizations do to support new leaders? And here specifically, women in leadership. What can we do to support women in leadership?
Well, one thing that I would share is that organizations are so focused on making sure you know the processes and procedures that they forget about the human.
Mm.
So
Yes.
we are so focused on who to go to if you have this question, or who's in charge of this area, or how do we do this invoice, or what is the process for getting this done? So that's the handbook, that's the training, that's the office, the directory,
Mhm.
if you will, that's all digital. And then learning all the computer programs that you
Mhm.
have to do within the organization, but they forget about the person.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I would recommend to companies is, again, it's almost like a mentorship, pair them with somebody at the institution that is their go-to person, that has a similar role, maybe not in the same area, but a similar role, or who has been there, who is seasoned. So that is one huge thing that can be done. But two, remember to help them develop as a person and a leader. It's not about all the processes and the what to do and how to do it. It's
Mhm.
about, how do I handle the stress of this position?
Oh,
How do I
yes.
handle the decisions that I have to make in this position? And that's what I didn't have. And
Me
so,
neither.
a lot of this was I figured it out on my own,
Mhm.
but it would have been very helpful if I had those opportunities,
Mhm.
with somebody else. And so when I was in my position, I had a lot of individuals that were under me that were in charge of departments. And so we would have one-on-one meetings once a month. And it wasn't a meeting where I asked any questions. I said, okay, this is your time. What would you like to talk about or share?
Yeah.
And they could share struggles within their department. They could share struggles that they had themselves. And that was our mentor session that we had. And I even did that with new faculty that came to the campus, so that we could just sit down, and those new faculty, they had a bond because they were all the new faculty, and we just had a handful one year. And they would ask questions or things that they didn't know, or how do I handle this situation? Or I've never experienced this. What would you recommend? Or how can you guide me? And they would share things with each other.
Yes.
And so I think that companies are missing that human side. Um, John Gordon has the energy bus, as you mentioned
Mhm.
before, about mindset. And so that is one of the biggest programs that he has in education, mainly K-12, because it all starts with mindset.
Yeah.
If you're focused on all the how to and not on the who, then we are going to have some challenges. And you forget
Mhm.
about that person, and that's when you get burned out.
Yes.
So it's really focusing on the human aspect and developing that person, allowing them to go to conferences, allowing them to go to, there's women in higher education conferences at every state level.
Mhm.
In fact, the Arkansas one is on the 29th. So there are opportunities everywhere where you can get support with other women in leadership, focusing on the human aspect. And just remember, it's not all about the processes. You
Yes.
got to develop the human too.
I love it. I love the way that you just kind of summarized everything that's wrong with our onboarding of new leaders. Yes,
Mhm.
they need to know processes, but it can't be all about that. The human side. And you've got to develop trust in that too, because they're not going
Mhm.
to reveal what they're really struggling with if they don't trust. If they feel like you're going to use that against them later, so
That's right.
develop that trust. But don't forget the human side. So good. And thinking about, your company, Do Good Leadership, you know, what are you really hoping to change with the whole leadership realm? And I know that's a huge question, but what
Mhm.
is your vision and your mission for Do Good Leadership? Because so many leaders listening may not have their own vision or mission for how they're making a positive impact in leadership. So I want you to share yours, and so that they can help develop their own, so that we can change this trajectory of leadership. So we're doing a better job of supporting women and all leaders.
Well, my whole goal is to inspire and empower others to be better leaders. I mean, that's what my ultimate mission is. And so as I go through, you mentioned that I was a speaker. So I want to go into those organizations and help everybody understand that leadership is about the person. Leadership is about those relationships. And
Mhm.
once you can establish that, amazing things are going to happen. And it's the we over the me. It's
Yeah.
it's not all about that. It's how can we get to know our folks. So
Mhm.
my goal is to really share the positivity, because we know that statistically, if you're a positive person, you're less likely to have a cardiovascular issue and die. I mean, that's it's true research,
And that's the
and
science.
that and that's the science. And most of the people that go to the doctor, 90% of doctor visits are stress related.
Mhm.
And so if we focus on a positive, supporting, you mentioned the word trust, which is huge. trusting environment, think about how the culture of our organizations would change. And
Mhm.
when you feel safe and secure and you feel supported, you are more creative. You tend to take more chances, ask more questions. You are really developing some amazing things because everyone is in this trust circle and you bring different strengths. And so you are more productive automatically because of that.
Mhm.
And so I just hope that I can be kind of a wave of positivity, just showing that empowering one another is only going to lead to success and serve those that we are best to serve, whether it's the student or the person that we're serving in
Yeah.
our company. And so through speaking, through mentoring individuals, I have some courses that I'm working on developing. It is just, I like to smile every day, and you can see me on this screen, but most people can't. That's one of the things that people say is that I'm always smiling, I'm always happy, I'm always positive. It's easy to do that when you truly believe in it and you're looking for the good in other people. And I married into the name Duguid. So, my husband just kind of laughs because he says, "You're doing all these great things with our name." I'm like, "Yeah, but it's perfect. Do good
Mhm.
leadership. It is based on my
Yes.
name." But that's who we are. And so I just encourage everyone to look at the opportunities rather than the challenges. Even if
Mhm.
you have a struggle, there's usually a reason that you're going through that struggle. And so it's find the reason, find the positive side, find the message,
Mhm.
because it's there to make you stronger. It's there to help you grow and develop, and it's there to make you the best person you can be to serve those around you.
I love it. And I want to speak to you for just a second because just in listening to your story from beginning to end to now, you had a mother who was an amazing leader, right?
Hmm.
And when you lost her, you felt lost. And you're
Hmm.
like, no, I need to find my way. And you know what? I'm going to help other people find their way. Just like
Hmm.
my mother welcomed everybody to the neighborhood. She was that
Hmm.
welcoming piece to help them feel at home and know that they are loved and accepted and can flourish here, right? That
Hmm.
was the legacy of your mother. And you are turning it around and doing it for leaders. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so, all my leaders listening, what do you want your legacy to be? Like Dr. Duguid, you have an amazing last name, Dr. Stephanie. It really is. Like your legacy is so clear to you, and you are working that mission, and it comes off so like this is what I love to do, and I know that I'm doing what I was made to do. And
Hmm.
leaders, I want that for you out there. So find, your story. This is her story. These are her shoes, right? Shoes
Hmm.
that, she was raised in that her mother gave her. So find your shoes, find your story, and turn it around and help others. You use your story to help others and build that beautiful legacy. So I'm sorry, that just came over me as I just saw this like is come full circle. And I was like, I gotta tell Dr. Stephanie because it's
I
so
love it.
beautiful. I love
Well,
what you're
thank
doing.
you.
All
Thank
right. So
you.
as we kind of wrap up, you have shared so many amazing things. And I know that you kind of got in my head a lot on the imposter syndrome, the lack of confidence, the competition, the whole bunch of stuff that we women think about. On a side note, I heard a comedian one time. He was talking about how men have a do nothing box where they can sit there and they're not thinking and they're literally doing nothing. And women are just like, like these little
Yes.
wires that never stop. And so, men leaders who are listening to this, when you work with women, yes, our minds are always going. So, thinking about everything that you shared, what are some key takeaways for our listeners that we can apply to grow in leadership?
Well, I think the key factor is just believe. Believe you can. We talked about how many women say, "I can't do this. I can't do this." So let's shift that and say, "I can."
Yes.
Because whenever we say it's impossible, if you break that apart, it's I'm possible or the situation
Mhm.
is possible. And so I think that is the best thing is to believe you can. I don't know if anybody listens to Mel Robbins. She's sometimes colorful in what she says, but she has some amazing messages. Is her high five habit is so true. Is that as women, we want to support everybody else. We give everybody else high fives. We are just, behind them, empowering them along the way. But we need somebody to give us a high five. And so she said, every morning, look in that mirror and give yourself a high five. You're here, you're doing it, you're up, you're working. And so just support yourself on a regular basis. Have that mantra in the morning. Say, I believe I can, and then finish the sentence with whatever you believe you can do. The more it is in the forefront of your mind, the more likely you are to meet those goals.
So good. Positive self talk really matters, right?
That's right.
And all right. So, what is one poor decision that you would warn our leaders to avoid? Like, come on, leaders, don't do that. You're better than that.
Well, I think one poor decision that I did, and it was years ago, is I questioned if I could step into a certain role, and I passed it.
Mm.
And I wish that I had taken that. So when there's opportunities there, I encourage you to take them, unless there's just this really deep feeling, and your gut is very sensitive, women. Listen to your gut because it's usually right. But if it's not an, oh my gosh, I can't take this for some severe reasons, take that opportunity. You never know when you're going to have a turning point in your life that is going to change your trajectory and find out exactly who you're supposed to be. So don't discredit opportunities when they open. Take that step.
Awesome. That's amazing. Hey, Dr. Stephanie, where can our listeners go to learn more about you and your work?
So I do have a website. It's drstephaniedugid.com. And then I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, all with Stephanie Duguid. So I would
Awesome.
love for people to reach out to me. And thank you so much for having me on here.
That's awesome. And guys, I will have all of those links in the notes because even though her name is Duguid, it's actually spelled a little bit different. Will you spell your name for us?
Yes, last name is Duguid.
That's right, Dr. Duguid. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Stephanie, for being here. I love the work that you're doing. I know it's been impactful in my life, and I love following you on social media. I feel poured into daily with all of your things out there. So thank you. And guys, until next time, continue putting in the work of building your life and leadership on the rocks, the essential rocks. God bless. Remember, the most essential rock you can build your life and leadership on is the rock of Jesus Christ. Today's Bible verse comes from Proverbs chapter 11, verse 25. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. Hey, it's Bethany again. If you're enjoying the Leadership on the Rocks podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss a single episode. Also, be sure to rate the show. We hope to earn 5 stars in serving you in leadership, and through your ratings, it'll help us get the word out about what we do here at Leadership on the Rocks. If you feel this podcast is helpful, be sure to share it with your friends, family, and coworkers, or anyone who wants to grow in leadership, but also have harmony between their work and home life. Thanks, and I'll see you again in the next episode.